Smooth 98.1. Here we are, 30 minutes gone past 6 o'clock, and it is time for Business Express. Yes, and hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Interesting things are happening. Yeah, so it's time for Business Express, and Rotus is in, of course. Good morning, Rotus. How you doing?
I'm fine, Sope. Good morning to you. Good morning to all our listeners and viewers. Good to be with you all again on a Money Monday to start the week.
And good morning to our guest in the studio. We've got Dolapo Ashiru, who's the Deputy Managing Director of Interstate Securities Limited. Good morning, Dolapo. Great to have you in again.
Good morning, Rotus.
All right, good morning to you. And we've got YouTube. We are streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can leave your comments and questions up on the live stream. You can also send WhatsApp messages into 0809 444 0981 or take you to Twitter where we are at smooth981FM. Tag us in the tweets and we'll be able to read out whatever it is you want to add to the conversation. All right, so we're talking banks today. This should be an interesting conversation.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The banking space, it's been a little while since we just reviewed the banking space, and Dolapo is one of the best people to talk about when it comes to banks. We all use the banks a whole lot. Banks are growing. They are maneuvering their way through the economic environment. We've got the Tier 1 banks and Tier 2 banks. We've got banks like Fidelity Bank that's in the Tier 2 space that has made known their ambitions to go into the Tier 1 space. So I just want to talk about that. I guess, challenges ahead, digital banking and all the likes. So I guess, Dolapo, what are your thoughts on the Nigerian banking space as a whole at this time? How do you see the space?
A lot of interesting things that happen in the banking sector. Like you said, you have the Tier 1 banks. Tier 1 banks are called Tier 1 banks or attempt Tier 1 banks because for the following reasons. They're banks that have the biggest market cap, loan book, total deposit, size of total deposit, and size of total assets. So they're basically 5 banks for now that are termed Tier 1 banks, and those banks are First Bank, UBA, GTCO, Zenith Bank, and Access Bank. So together they control about 66 to 72% of total assets, loan book size, and total deposit. So they're what Americans call too big to fail and too big to save. A problem in any of those 5 banks I mentioned could cause a systemic problem in the entire banking sector.
Thank you for that.
So you have some Tier 2 banks too that are trying to join the big boys. So some banks are really trying to, but the dominant players are, like I said, are those banks, or what our friend Ugo likes to call fugas.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Metrics, yeah.
First Bank, GT Bank, Zenith Bank, Access Bank.
Thank you for helping the non-fuga people who don't know.
So, Dolapo, would you say that the recent upward review of the monetary policy rates, that the banks will benefit from that?
It's a mixed bag. Yes, they'll benefit from that, yes, but the depositors or their clients will not benefit from that, because that means that ultimately they have to reprice loans and all that. So if you are maybe paying 16% interest for your loans, you have to jack it up a bit. So bank clients who take loans would not be happy with that, but the bankers will make more money on that.
All right. So you mentioned some Tier 2 banks looking at the Tier 1 space to join the big boys. The Fidelity Bank, for instance, you guys know I'm a big fan of female-led leadership. I want a female president, female CEOs, and female chairs of boards everywhere.
Female president who has not been handed a poison chalice. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Good point. Very good point. So Fidelity is run by Neka. I think she came in 2021. What do you make of their ambitions to enter the Tier 1 space, Doc?
Yeah, they're really slow and steady. They're gradually making progress. And they're growing their loan book because, a major income for banks is basically your loan book when you lend people money and get interest rates. So they're doing a good job, and they've also been able to keep their NPLs low. NPLs are called non-performing loans. So, and that's good, because that also reflects the quality of the assets. So when you have a loan book that's very, very efficient and has a very, very low margin of non-performing loans, it's good for any bank.
Okay, great stuff. So we'll see how that works out. Yes, go ahead.
Before we get into our next talking point, I just wanted to quickly bring out this message from Isaac, who sent in a WhatsApp message saying, I was just wondering how banks are gearing up to the use of the e-Naira. I only look forward to ways we can enjoy the benefits of the currency and how it impacts the banking experience. Response?
Dolapo, you want to go first? The e-Naira, right? Right now, I know that the central bank created a separate wallet for the e-Naira, which I guess at some point should merge, or rather, banks should have their own wallets to be allowed for the e-Naira transactions to go through. So there's promise there. I think there's still a few, teething issues here and there with downloads and so on and so forth, but it holds a lot of promise as far as what it means. And we're actually had a question for Dolapo on digital banking later, but I think it holds promise. It's just an issue of moving from that CBN wallet over to the different banks, their own particular wallets to allow those transactions to go through. Dolapo, what are your thoughts on e-Naira?
I think, like you said, it's the future, but we're not it's the future, but we're not really doing a good job trying to address the teething issues. So right now, it's not where it should be. But I think as time goes on, CBN will resolve all those issues and we'll move forward with it.
Another question on WhatsApp, this time Austin from Satellite, who says, why is First Bank's headquarters sealed in Abuja, sealed by the courts?
By the courts?
No.
Yeah, I haven't heard of
First of all, First Bank, the member of First Bank, they denied, they said no, the Abuja office wasn't sealed. They came up, that's what First Bank said.
Okay.
Gotcha. Great stuff. Dolapo, still on tier 2 banks. I want to ask you now, we've talked about Fidelity and their own tier 1 ambitions. The Pan-African strategy, Dolapo, where you have footprints in other African nations. EcoBank is in that space. Some of the other banks have Pan-Africa. What do you make of that strategy as for a bank to have a footprint across the continent?
It's a fantastic initiative, especially it's a fantastic initiative, and a lot of banks are doing it right now. And I think that also holds the future. So you see a lot of Nigerian banks, especially banks like UBA. UBA has a very strong Pan-African footprint, and other banks like other Tier 1 banks too are also joining that Pan-African footprint. So I think it's a future.
All right. And then there's the African Continental Free Trade Area. That's also ties in there as well. Doc, what about headwinds? You see any headwinds for the banks in the near future or going down the line?
Okay, there's some current headwinds, and one that concerns me is also brain drain. Many banks, their tech arms are losing a lot of people. People are just leaving the country. A lot of skilled labor are leaving the country. So banks are having a high turnover of staff in their tech arm, and it's a concern for me. And it's not just banks, all over the many sectors. Doctors are leaving, everybody seems to be leaving. So there's a massive brain drain going on, and it's affecting fintech in a big way.
Indeed.
Now,
and people are looking to work in other companies outside of Nigeria. On tech,
also inflation too is a headwind to inflation.
Yes, indeed. And also
FX.
Because banks have cut their hours.
Thinking of extra. Dolapo keeps going, and this, and that.
There are a lot of things. It's a lot of challenging times for both bankers and bank depositors all over.
Right.
So it's a challenging time for business people right now in the country. So, but whoever can bring a solution to solve these problems will always have a head start. So you have to think of innovative ways to, manage those problems and overcome those problems. That's all.
Okay, very quickly, we've got more. So Isaac is back with this. Thinking out loud, banks are not doing what they should be doing. Lending. SMEs need the banks to support them. How can the banks be made to support them?
Well, Dolapo, I actually wanted to throw a question to you about the high cost of borrowing in Nigeria. I don't know. I think that's just the cost of doing business. But what do you make of how we can get more lending or more cheaper lending to SMEs and so on?
Well, first of all, I call it, like I said last time I came here, I call it's all part of the unease of doing business in Nigeria. So it's tough to, if you're not a big name, it's very, very hard for you to get a bank loan in Nigeria. You have to be an established, probably a multinational. So it's tough. I know the government through CBN has done some intervention funds to help SMEs, but I'm not too sure how effective that has been. Yes, they've recorded some success, but I think they're still below par. So right now, a lot of people have to find other ways of raising money, especially from outside the country.
All right. And Ahmed from Ogudu says, with the increase in MPR will the increase in MPR have a positive effect on savings deposits accounts?
Marginal. The banks always try to make sure that there's a big difference between cost of fund and how much they make. So it's marginal.
Oh wow! And Zikola has a story to tell. So Zikola says, has come in with a strong statement, saying a strong opinion rather, saying the Nigerian bank space seems to be full of legalized fraud and very poor customer service, occupied by staff who are unwilling to assist their customers. One of those banks wiped out my account balance over the weekend. The trace is not even on my statement, and they're not responding to my emails. They told me to send them a DM on Twitter. They're also not responding to my DMs.
Well, the CBN has been very vocal about any customer service issues when it comes to your money not taken out and not being returned. Send them a message. I think it's an email and a phone number to call. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they'll hopefully take it from there. I don't believe money can disappear without a trace. We Nigerian banks, I have to say, as far as electronic tracking, if money is taken out of your account, it has to go somewhere. And maybe to take you physically going to the branch and raising your voice at somebody or calling customer service and being very specific. But money can't just disappear. The bank has to be able to answer. If they don't, you report them to the regulator, and then the regulator will hopefully take it over. So don't fair.
I mean, I do know those points where money was going, well, it looked like money had disappeared from my account, but that was just a lien put on money for certain transactions, online transactions. So that could be something.
There's got to be a trace. It can't vanish into thin. More messages?
We've got a couple more messages. So I'll read this one from Benga Akomu, who says, how do you stimulate this economy without putting money in people's pockets? I hear the federal government is proposing cuts in salaries for civil servants. I
haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard that one too. But it's tough to stimulate an economy when the inflation rate is double digits. Very, very tough.
Exactly.
And Gilbert Musa from Festac says, on the e-Naira scheme, though it might be a laudable idea, it's only logical to address foundational challenges before innovation. For instance, we've been talking about a cashless society when you cannot conveniently pay with your debit card because of continuous network instability, both on phones and cash payment devices like POS. Oh yes, the joy of them holding it up, looking for signals.
That's a good point.
Says every payment can be traced and transactions done during the weekend will be reflected in your statement on the next working day.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we've got about a minute.
About a minute. What's your outlook for banks in a minute?
Challenging, but I think that most banks, I think challenging. Looking for it challenging, but I think that the tier 1 banks and the few tier 2 banks are in poor position to make the best of the situation. I also think that it'll be tough for business owners when it comes to credit and all that. But I think that the banks have their own way of making money, especially through non-interest income and also through interest income.
Nigerian banks are resilient. They are very, very. And Dolapo, really appreciates your time. It's always great to have you.
And Nigerian banking customers are very resilient.
Yes, so
very good point, Sope.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you to you, Dolapo Ashiru. He's the Deputy Managing Director of Interstate Securities Limited and also a Business Express favorite. And thank you to you, Rotus. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes,
but
indeed.
Before we get him back on Business Express tomorrow, you can see him on TV or you can see him on Twitter. Find him at Rotanquote, find him wherever it is that you find him usually. Okay, so that's our Business Express. Thank you. And till tomorrow.